Now, what makes the Chameleon color tones a little bbit different than other markers is that the way you blend them and lay your colors down is different than other alcohol-based markers on the market. Now, with other ones, you use, 2 or 3 or more colors to give yourself a nice blend. But with the Chameleons, you're going to use one marker for your complete range of colors. So on the markers itself, it comes with a bullet nib at one end, and then in this middle cap, you've got a brush nib, and then the other end of the marker is a barrel that is filled with the colorless toner medium. Now, what this does for you is if you look inside this cap, you'll see a little bullet nib, and it works with the special brush nib on the other end of the marker to give a flow of that colorless toner medium right to your brush nib, which dilutes the color and lets you get that whole range of color right from one marker. So I'd like to show you just real quick how they kind of work, and then I'll kind of go over the method that I've developed to color a couple different things. So I'm going to pull out this little piece of scratch paper here and show you that this one I'm using the YG1, which is yellow green, to just here is the base color. If you were to use it straight, you get a really nice and vibrant green. Now if you were to couple that with the lid, and it works a little better if you hold it straight up and down, but we'll still get the idea, and you put them together, you can see in the little window that the brush nib is touching the little bullet nib in there. You hold it in there for about 10, 15, 20 seconds. The longer you hold it in there, the longer you're going to get a diluted color to play with. So if you're doing little fixes, do something like 5 seconds. If you'd like something a bit longer, start with 20, and kind of after a while you'll get a sense of how long works for what you need. So I'd say that was about 20 seconds. So I'm just going to kind of start at one end. You just kind of scribble, and you can see that you can get a full range of color just from this one marker. It's really cool. I'm not somebody with other markers who can get like a pastel look, but I'm finding that this is really good for me for that especially. So kind of best practice at this as well is to, when you're done, to just kind of scribble it off to make sure you're back to start. That way, when you pull the cap off in the future, you're not surprised by what you find. But really, that is the basic technique with the Chameleons. There's 20 colors that are going to be available in July. There'll be some 5-pack sets as well as a 22-pack set, which also comes with a just marker with just the colorless toner medium, as well as a detail pen. So in the next part of this video, I'm just going to kind of go over how I color skin and then hair, and then I'll do a little speed coloring with these for you. Okay, so the image I've printed out here is a digi-stamp from Summer Girl. She's called Bubbles Mermaid, and I'm just going to go over, first off, how I color skin, and then I'll go over how I color hair, and then I'll speed color the last part of the image, so you can just kind of see the flow of it. So the technique I'm going to show you, I don't know if it's necessarily official, but this is the technique that works for me. So I'm using a color called Fawn, and what I do, let's turn this light a little, is I come in and I just kind of lay in my darker areas first. just kind of rough it in. And if you're worried about detail or anything like that right now, that's not the thing to worry about. So I'm just going to start with her face, roughen in the darker areas. Just kind of like so. Which she now looks kind of funny maybe, but that is okay. So then I'm going to take and combine my marker in its chamber. I'm going to let it kind of sit there for about 10-15 seconds. And then I'll start blending section by section. That way I'm getting my lightest and then blending into the dark. And by doing it this way, by laying down my shadows first, I'll still get a smooth blend, but I kind of have some visual goals set for myself. So then I just, keep an eye on what you're doing. And you can kind of see the color change. So you're just kind of working the color. And then you can always go back for quick little snippets to kind of dial it in. After a while, you kind of get to the point where you think about it less and less. And that's when you know you're kind of on the right track. I know if I do little areas, I'm going to hold it less. If I'm doing bigger areas, I'm going to let it sit there longer. That kind of idea. So I'm just moving from where I have the lighter areas to the darker areas to kind of blend them together. Now with a larger, flatter area, you can just kind of do what I showed you in the first part of the video and really hold it on there for a longer period of time and then blend like that. But I'm trying to get a little more detail in it, so that's why I'm working it kind of the way I am. Not long enough. The really nice thing about these is it's because you're putting the wet on the wet of the tips, it kind of gives you a lot of playtime in how long the paper stays damp for, which gives you a nice blend. So now I'm going to work kind of around the outside. Since this is the side that has the most shadow, I'm going to start from top and then bottom in. Kind of blend this with what I already have down. Give it a little count. And then I'll start on the other end in just a second. So it's just getting your own kind of technique. And the first time you do it, at least for me, I was like, this is so hard. But it's really not. It's just you're overthinking it by doing what you're used to with other markers. I mean, any medium. And while this is like the same kind of ink as you're used to, it's kind of its own thing. So any medium has its techniques that you have to learn. I almost akin this to watercolor painting with markers. Because it blends so nice because the ink is so damp on the paper that you can kind of really get some playtime out of it. See, I'm being nitpicky right now because that's how I roll. But you don't have to be as nitpicky as I am. Another thing you can do, and again, like I said, I don't know if this is official Chameleon techniques, is if you want to, you can use a tip-to-tip method of using a colored with your brush tip to lay down some shadow colors or something like that. So that gives you a lot of different options. So now I'm just going to kind of go ahead and speed color through the rest of the skin. And there you go. So, like I mentioned before, you can go in and add some shadow colors. You can go in and add cheek colors, lip colors, any other kinds of highlights that you want to do. You can really do anything with the chameleons that you can do with any other markers. So the next thing I'm going to show you is kind of my technique for doing hair. It's along the same lines as how I did skin, but just a smidge different. So I'll show you how I do my technique, and then I'll do like I did with the skin and speed color through the rest of it. So for the hair, I'm going to use BR1, which is called Sienna, and I'm going to do this section right up here, and I'm just going to kind of show you how I do it. You have to have kind of a light touch, and I'm laying in the darkest colors first, or the darkest areas first. Very light touch. The brush nib on the Chameleon has a little more give than you might be used to, but that is so it can do its effects with the blending chamber. So it's just something that you just have to play with and get your technique down. So that's all I'm doing, is just flicking in the darkest areas, kind of establishing light source and flow and all that good stuff. All that good necessariness. Okay. I could just keep doing this like all day, but you kind of get the idea. So then we're going to do kind of like what we did for the skin, and I'm going to start using the blending chamber. Now, with the hair, you're going to be doing more of the same flicking motion. You're just going to be paying close attention to the color that you're getting. I want a little longer. Alright, so we're just gonna, I've got a very light brown going. I'm just gonna keep flicking. Eventually you'll see how it starts to come back. Add a little more blending solution. And keep working my flicks in the texture. Texture in hair is a big component, so taking your time is pretty important. Now there's 20 colors in the Chameleon markers that are going to come out, and especially for the hair you can do a lot of color layering to get different looks. I've done a redhead using the sienna, yellow, orange, yellow, and the red orange to really good effect. I'll put a link down in the video description. You can see that. So it's just building up layers and knowing where your highlights are. The lighter the touch you can achieve, which is practice, the more detail you can add. See, now I'm getting carried away. So you kind of get the idea. Use the blending abilities of these markers to your advantage by laying down some layers of different tones and using the fact that it will go from light to dark to your advantage too by starting in your highlight sections and working your way down toward your dark sections. So as I know it goes darker, I'll start using it more down here where I want this darker because of the shadow. So that's kind of the base technique. I'm going to go ahead and speed color through the rest of the hair, and then you can see, get it to the side. You can see what I mean. Okay, so that is my technique for coloring hair. Another thing that you can do is to go through with the handy dandy bullet nib, since it's a very fine nib. See, I'll show you right here. And using your light touch that you practice to kind of add in some extra strands there, if you are unable to do that with the brush nib. So you can just get a little extra detail that way. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of speed color through the rest of this image, and you can see kind of the workflow, if that's what you want to call it, on coloring the entire image. I'm gonna probably go through and add a little shadows back to the skin and stuff like that too, so you can see that unofficial bullet nib to special brush nib technique that I mentioned earlier.